Have you ever been approached to get involved in politics?
But do it right now.
Oh, you are? Yeah. Here we go. All right.
No, I was just kidding about
Harrison Ford is a name synonymous with cinematic legends from Han Solo to the swashbuckling archaeologist Indiana Jones. Beyond his on-screen heroics, Ford has also emerged as a vocal figure in political and environmental causes. His recent endorsement of Kamala Harris for president, as well as his outspoken critiques of conservative politicians, has drawn sharp reactions from Republicans. Once a universally admired icon, Ford now finds himself at the center of a political controversy, with many conservatives expressing disdain for his actions. Harrison Ford's political background. Harrison's political views have been shaped by a lifetime of observing social and environmental issues. Raised in a household with Democratic leanings, Ford absorbed lessons about responsibility and fairness early on. He's described his political beliefs as rooted in a desire to do what is morally right, a sentiment that has carried over into his public life. In interviews, he's often spoken about the importance of civic duty, once stating, quote, "Our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors." Ford's activism began to take shape during the height of his career, with a particular focus on environmental issues. As an avid pilot and nature enthusiast, he became a prominent voice for conservation. He worked closely with organizations like Conservation International, where he served on the board, advocating for the protection of biodiversity and sustainable practices. His speeches on climate change often included pointed critiques of political inaction, particularly targeting leaders who deny the existence of the crisis. Quote, "We are faced with, I believe, the greatest moral crisis of our time," he said at the World Government Summit in 2018. Over the years, his public appearances reflected his increasingly outspoken stance on politics and activism. While he has primarily focused on environmental causes, his broader political opinions have occasionally come to the forefront. He's been critical of what he sees as the erosion of democratic values and the growing polarization of American politics. These statements, often made during interviews or public events, highlighted Ford's willingness to use his platform to address controversial issues, even if it risked alienating parts of his fan base. His moral clarity on these issues, while admired by many, has also drawn anger from critics who see his views as emblematic of Hollywood's perceived liberal bias. Endorsement of Kamala Harris.
I'm Harrison Ford, doing something I never thought I'd do. Telling people I've never met who I'm voting for, and why I think they might do the same.
Harrison Ford's endorsement of Kamala Harris during her bid for the presidency marked a significant moment in his political journey. Ford's support for Harris, which was widely publicized, resonated with those who admired her leadership, but provoked sharp reactions from conservatives. In an interview discussing his endorsement, Ford praised Harris for her vision and determination, saying, quote, "She represents the kind of leadership we desperately need, principled, forward-thinking, and committed to justice." His remarks underscored his belief in the importance of strong leadership during a time of division and uncertainty in the U.S. His endorsement was not merely symbolic. He appeared at events and lent his voice to the campaign, amplifying Harris's message. The move was consistent with Ford's history of supporting Democratic candidates and causes, but it also highlighted his willingness to step further into the political spotlight. For many Republicans, this endorsement crossed a line. It solidified their perception of Ford as yet another Hollywood figure using fame to promote a liberal agenda. Critics accused him of aligning with what they viewed as a radical political movement, and his decision became a lightning rod for online backlash. The endorsement raised questions about the intersection of celebrity and politics. Some argued that Ford's political engagement risked overshadowing his decades-long career in film, while others applauded his courage in speaking out. For Ford, however, the decision was simple. In his own words, quote, "If you have a platform and you don't use it to stand up for what you believe is right, then what's the point of having it?"
Do I agree with every one of their policies? Of course not. Do I think they're perfect? Come on, for crying out loud, they're people just like you and me. But these two people believe in the rule of law. They believe in science. They believe that when you govern, you do so for all Americans.
Ford's broader political involvement. Harrison Ford's engagement with politics extends well beyond his endorsement of Kamala Harris. For years, he's been an outspoken advocate for environmental issues, often using his global platform to call for urgent action on climate change. His passion for conservation has led him to deliver keynote addresses at international summits, where his blunt critiques of inaction have made headlines. At the 2019 United Nations Climate Action Summit, he didn't mince words when addressing global leaders, saying, quote, "Stop giving power to people who don't believe in science, or worse than that, pretend that they don't believe in science for their own self-interest." Ford's activism is rooted in a belief that humanity has a moral obligation to protect the planet. As a board member of Conservation International, he's worked tirelessly to promote sustainable practices and highlight the interconnectedness of ecosystems. Some critics, particularly those with conservative views, have dismissed his efforts as elitist or disconnected from the concerns of everyday citizens. But Ford has remained undeterred. Quote, "Nature doesn't need people," he famously said. "People need nature." In addition to environmental advocacy, he's spoken on broader political issues, often taking a critical stance against policies he views as harmful or unjust. He expressed concerns about the erosion of democratic norms, racial inequality, and the politicization of science. Despite the backlash against him, Ford's commitment to speaking out reflects his conviction that silence is not an option. Quote, "We've got to stand up for the things that matter," he said, a sentiment that underscores the intersection of his personal values and public activism.
I think it's come to the point where we got to start talking politics. But we got to talk about it in a positive way. We've got to regain the middle ground. We're in these ideological enclaves, but the truth is in the middle.
Star Wars and politics, a deeper look. Harrison's role in the Star Wars franchise has long been a subject of fascination, not just for its cinematic legacy, but for the subtle political undertones woven into its narrative. Created by George Lucas during the Vietnam War era, Star Wars was steeped in anti-authoritarian themes, with the Rebel Alliance standing as a metaphor for resistance against oppression. While Ford has generally steered clear of discussing the deeper political implications of the films, the series' core message of justice, resistance, and hope align closely with the values he's espoused throughout his life. The intersection of Star Wars and modern politics has added another layer of scrutiny to Ford's activism, as the public has drawn parallels between the Empire's totalitarian regime and real-world political systems. Ford's critics on the right have accused him of being part of a Hollywood elite that seeks to politicize popular culture. A Los Angeles Review of Books analysis highlighted how Star Wars' enduring popularity is, in part, due to its ability to mirror societal struggles, a characteristic that may have amplified conservative backlash against Ford. Despite this, he's often downplayed the political allegories in his performances, focusing instead on his craft. In an interview reflecting on Han Solo, he described the character as, quote, "an outsider who ends up doing the right thing, even when it's not in his interest." This perspective mirrors Ford's own journey in activism, where he's taken stances that may not serve his popularity, but reflect his personal convictions. Harrison's perspective on the criticism. Harrison has never been one to shy away from expressing his thoughts, even when his views invite controversy. In response to the criticism he's received from conservatives and others for his political and environmental stances, Ford has remained characteristically unflinching. Quote, "I'm not in this to win a popularity contest," he said in a 2020 interview. "If people don't like what I have to say, that's their prerogative, but it doesn't change what I believe." Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite role of Harrison's? Let us know in the comments section below.